Good morning.
Good morning.
Our scripture reading comes from John 21, verses 1 through 6. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them, and they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. If you look at that verse, I would encourage you to keep your Bibles open on those scriptures. If you look at the last chapter in John, a lot of things are happening. A lot of things are being said. A lot of things are being seen. A lot of things are brand new once again. And as we think back to last week, we were talking about the new. And we were talking about opportunities and times to be able to engage a little bit and to be able to recognize another transition in our life and in how do we respond. And that we went on pretty well last week about that. And I promise we won't go to 12:30 today. All right, so I'm sure I can see it in your mind. I wonder how long he's going to talk now. But we're going to tie these in together because something new is actually happening here. And I hope it's not something that when we look at it and we read it, we think to ourselves, wow, that was great for them. Because it's not an example that was just great for them. It's an example that is constantly applied into our own lives and that we can see happening as well. What I'd like to do is I would like to go through these 6 verses. It's going to be 3 points that I want to bring out to us in order for us to go home and to be able to think a little bit about this and to have some meat and potatoes to eat on for the rest of the week until we meet again. I wanted to share this with you. There was a king one time, and on a dirt path, he had taken this huge boulder and he stuck it right in the middle of the road. And what he did was he went and hid behind a tree, and what he wanted to see was that whoever came down the road, who would stop and take time to move this boulder out of the way. And so as he stood there behind a tree hiding, people would come down the road. They would look at it. They would see it. They would do everything possible as they were traveling to go around the boulder. And without much room on the road, they made ways to go around the boulder and to keep on traveling. This happened and happened and happened over and over again. Till finally one gentleman showed up with a cart and a horse. And he said, "You know what? I would move this out of the way because I know it is bothersome for others." So he dug and he tried and he worked and he moved the boulder out of the way as the king was watching this gentleman. And as he moved the boulder out of the way, he found underneath it a note that says, "For your efforts and your willingness to work hard, this bag of gold is for you." You see, sometimes when we have obstacles that are in our road, instead of always going around them, if we were to go and tackle them, we'll find Jesus on the other side. And He'll be right there. But we have a tendency to kind of avoid and to keep on with the old traditions that we have, and we're not receiving the new blessings that God would want for each and every one of us. Failure. When we look at this verse, we see failure all over it. They're trying to fish. They're trying to be able to sustain themselves, and they can't. And I know for me, failure crushes me a lot of times. And I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but I don't like to lose. I really don't. Not as much as I used to hate it. But in my earlier days, I was very competitive in my previous years when I was younger. I would even sometimes cheat and look for every ways not to lose at something. I was playing a game with my sister, and I knew she was ahead. You ever played? What was it? What was the game called? You had all the marbles, and you try to get all your marbles to the other. Chinese checkers. And if I was about to lose at Chinese checkers, we'd be playing in the floor. You know what I'd do right before we'd end up losing? Before I knew I was going to lose? I hit it with my knee. It used to drive my sister crazy till she wouldn't play with me anymore. If I lost at basketball, I would head straight to my room and slam the door. If I lost at baseball, the thing that would happen is I could even win the game at baseball. I could have 4 hits. I could do very well. But if I had one error, I would concentrate on the error rather than the achievements a lot of times. And I was overly hard on myself. And I think sometimes even us, we can relate and look back at times in our life where we were a little hard on ourselves and we didn't like to fail. And we looked at failure as just as what it is, failure. And that we can't succeed. We would knock ourselves down. You hate failure, yet we fail. Some of the greatest heroes of all times have failed on numerous occasions, and their success came somewhat as a surprise. Thomas Edison. People told him that he was too stupid to learn anything. Abraham Lincoln lost elections. Disney, that'd be Walt Disney, he was told he had no real talent. Albert Einstein, he was examined for a learning disability and rejected by several schools. And all of us know this when Michael Jordan didn't even make the high school basketball team. It could be something simple like a class. For some of you, it has been a failed marriage, a failed business, a failed friendship, a failed ministry, failed parenting, moral failure. Perhaps you feel as though you haven't lived up to your ambitions or the expectations that other people put on you. We don't like failure. It bruises our ego. It angers us. It brings us guilt. It brings despair. It brings fear. And the most painful failure for the Christian is the failure to live out in Christian faith. You ever had an incident happen to you? Recount this. An incident that would happen and you realize that God showed up and yet you knew for a fact you displayed a lack of faith. I didn't believe it would happen this whole time. I didn't believe that was for me. I didn't believe that this part of the journey is set out for me to be able to do this. And we constantly do things that we think we want to do because we're not willing to do what it takes, like the guy moving the boulder, to overcome the obstacles to see what God has on the other side by faith. And we fall short so many times of being able to find true happiness in what we do. If you can identify, then I have good news for you. John 21 is all about failures. It's all about failing. It's for those who have failed Jesus. All of the disciples have failed in general, fleeing during the passion of Jesus. They are nowhere to be found. And Peter has failed in particular because of his pronounced failure and his arrogant boast. And he is on display here. Few people have crashed and fallen to the depths of sin and unfaithfulness as the Apostle Peter has, who denied his Lord, yet few people have been so powerfully used by God as Peter. After he repented and was restored, Peter's story in John 21 gives us hope for me and for you. And encouragement, because it illustrates a glorious truth. And if you want to write this down out of the whole sermon, I want you to realize this. Your failure hasn't put you out of reach from Jesus' restoring grace. From whatever it is you have done, or whatever it is you've seen and partaken in, or whatever it is that the lack of faith won't allow you to be able to move forward anymore, to take instruction, to try the new, to try something difficult, to break traditions, old ideas. That's what this is about. We look at it as some sort of simple story about fishing, but the gist of the story is not about that at all. It's about being willing to listen and try something completely different. There are few scenes in the gospel more impressive than this scene in the early morning by the Sea of Galilee. Not even the meeting between Christ and Mary in the garden is more touching or tender than this incident. Calvary was past. The night of darkness is ended. Jesus has risen, and the awful strain was over in such hours that men instinctively turned again to the common toils with the strain that has interrupted it. And in such an hour, Peter said, you know what? It's done. It's over. Jesus has died. He's gone. There's nothing left. It's like the end of the show. It's like I've received and I've seen all of these things, but what does Peter say? What does he do? I'm going back. I'm going to revert back, because we all know that Peter was actually called to go out boldly and tell the world about Christ and to start the church and to be the rock and the foundation. But what was the first thing he says? He said, man, I'm going fishing. I'm gone. And we do that at times, don't we? We witness and embrace and feel the sense of Christ in our life, and it only takes a week or so, and all of a sudden, I'm gone. I'm back. I have an idea that I think might work. And like Peter and the other disciples, they stand there and they say, I know what I saw, and I know what is supposed to have happened. It was prophesied, and now it's over. And Jesus never once said anything about anything being over. It's the new. It's just begun. The words I wish to dwell upon are these. Cast the net on the right side of the ship. Think about that. And what does that suggest for me? There are three important truths. First, what we long for is often closer than we think. Second, we should never be afraid to change our methods. And third, Christ can manage things for us a lot better than we can for ourselves. So let's look at the first point as we go through this. Follow along in your Bibles, if you would. A lot of times what we long for is often nearer than we think. You see, at a glance, it was so that morning. Somehow within the sweep of their nets was a harvest of the sea these men were looking for. What this is saying is that what they desired, what they longed for, was a lot closer than what they thought. They were just simply looking in the wrong direction. They were going by, if you were to look at fishermen and the habits and ways, if you look at people in their certain trades, look at a carpenter, for example. They do things a certain way. They do things with their tools. They do things with how they construct buildings. They do things with the way they show up to work, the way they perform. And it's like that everywhere we go. We have a tendency to be ritualistic in our performances. And so this is what they're doing here as well. And they're thinking to themselves, this is where all the fish are. This is where we're going to focus our efforts. And we're going to keep going and keep going and keep going. And what is so funny about that is they keep going and keep going and keep going and get nothing, nothing, nothing. And they keep doing the same thing over and over, thinking that eventually I should come out ahead because I know better. They probably made comments such as, there used to be a lot of good fish here. Now there doesn't seem to be any at all. But they're right there beside them. But the fish were there, as plentiful as ever. They weren't that far away. Cast the net on the right side of the ship, and it was full of great fish. What they had told for all night was not remote, but what their hearts were set on was not far away. When Peter and Thomas and John recalled that morning amid the stress and struggles of the after years, it would flash on them as one of its sweetest memories. What we long for may be closer than we think. It might be right there beside us. Why do we stop? Why do we quit? What is the one thing that actually sparks more interest in your life that can deviate you from what Jesus would call you to do? What is it? Is it something you see on TV that gets you so excited you're going to try that and see how far it takes you? Is it something that somebody encouraged you to do that they thought might be a new way for you in order to be able to find the happiness that you may be looking for? Why do we continually divert from the simple lessons that are right in front of us? We try so hard to find those things that are out there, and the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. But yet we will create a circle out of it in a heartbeat, won't we? We won't think to ourselves, or we won't try to recognize that Jesus is a lot closer than we think. Now, often reading the Bible, I'm struck with the divine assistance on that truth that we just talked about. And I take it that when God repeats a thing, He is bent on getting it driven into our hearts. Let me only recall to you the case of Hagar when she fled from Ishmael under the taunts of Sarah. Her flight lay through the desert with her child, and in the desert her womanly strength gave out. There was no water, there was no sign of water, and her child was perishing. And she cried out to Abraham's God. And then and there God opened Hagar's eyes, and within a stone's cast of her child there was a well. She would have given all the world for water, and it was running near her the whole time. You see, it was only after she went after the Father that she was able to see what the Father already had in store for her. Do we do that? And she's probably thinking to herself, I just took myself and my son through all this, and the answer and the solution was in front of me the whole time. And there's a great lesson to be learned by there, and we should actually realize how we fall short so much. And I wish that sometimes failure was a great indicator for us to say, man, I need to be closer to God. Not something where you kick yourself in the backside and you said, I can't get none of this done. Because it's always the I statement, isn't it? It's always, I can't get it finished. I can't accomplish this. I can't get it done. I didn't make the team. I didn't succeed. It's always I. Never once did we once say, did I ask Jesus to guide me to where it is He would have me go in this situation and circumstance. She thought of the well beside the tent of Abraham, and there was a spring not 100 yards away. She was thinking about the past and how great it was when she was with Abraham and there was a well and there was always plenty of water. She didn't focus on the fact that God was with her during that time. Don't revert back to old ways. Don't revert back to old memories and things that used to be. Because like I said before, like we talked about last week, you can't hold on to the old because you're going to miss the new and what God has had plans for you right now. It says, behold, I stand at the door and knock, says Christ, the very power and presence that you need. It is easy to believe that Christ taught in Galilee. It's easy to believe His power in the past. The hard thing is to believe that here and now there is one who can redeem and save and change you. Yet that is what you are longing for today. No one else knows it. They think you are quite satisfied, but you're not satisfied. And I'm here to tell you that all that you long for is closer than you think. Sometimes people, when I go up to them and I ask them, how are you doing? They don't realize that one of their friends just told me of a situation and that they're not in a good spot. And the first thing that they'll say is, Lieutenant, I'm great. God is good. Woo, woo. Really? Really? Is that how we're going to deviate from the problem or the situation? You had somebody already intervene on your behalf to be able to reply and tell me something that was going on, and you're going to say, all is well. I'm going to cast my net on the left side just a little bit more. I think what I'm longing for is on that side. So stop doing that. Christ is closer than you think. Don't struggle. He doesn't want you to struggle. He doesn't want you to fight it. Now, of course, you know for a fact from a fatherly love perspective, He'll let you until you bang your head enough and just like those fishermen, finally see Jesus and take some instruction. But you don't have to. Point number 2. We should never be afraid to change our methods. Never be afraid to change our message. Just think what would have happened by the lake if the disciples had been mastered by their own cowardly fear. All night they had cast their nets on the left-hand side. There may have been some fishermen superstition in that matter for why they were doing those things. They were simply doing what they had been taught to do. They were holding fast to a universal custom. Your ways are not His ways. Your thoughts, not His thoughts. Your plans for your life, let me tell you something. If you have a bucket list and a 10-year plan, guess what? It ain't God's plan. He's got something else in store for you. And if you decide to go after those things, then guarantee yourself you're going to fail at some of them. You're going to drop the ball. I remember I had on my bucket list 2 years ago. We were in Lexington, and I thought for sure my friends were doing it. So I put on my bucket list skydiving. And for Christmas, my wife got me tickets to go skydiving. And it was when May came around, after, of course, we did it in the summer. So when May came around, I went skydiving. And there's a funny thing about skydiving. Now, you can be all bold and happy when you want to and say, yeah, I'd love to do that. And this is great. I'll give it a shot. You can say that now. But when you're 13,000 feet in the air and they open the door and they're telling you, get out, all of a sudden you got a feeling and understanding. You're asking yourself, why did I put that on my bucket list? Every emotion inside of you, everything that you don't have a sense of fear until your body is telling you, this is bad, this is bad, don't do this, don't do this. But yet you have the ability still to do what? God is still saying, trust me, I didn't put skydiving on the things that I wanted you as my child to do. But if you're going to do this, you're going to overcome those fears that I've given you. You're going to overcome the understanding that there are some things in life you should not try. And if you can't get that, you're going to miss a lot of things because it's 50-50. You might be jumping out, but there's no sign up there that says, if your parachute don't open, we'll give you your money back. No, sir. That ain't there. And I jumped out. And I wasn't happy about doing it. And my pride is what made me do it. Secondly, I had to do it because the pilot did not have the seats that were set up by federal aviation rules. If you're going to land a plane, it has to come equipped with seat belts. And you have to be able to be buckled in for safety measures. This plane didn't have seat belts. It had a bench, a wooden bench. So needless to say, I say all that is when you go up, you're going to get out. Because he can't land with. But the thing that was so amazing was that I told myself, one, this is a bad idea. Two, my pride is standing in the way because if I wanted to land with that plane bad enough, I'd land with it. They wouldn't kick me out. I wouldn't do those things. And when I jumped out and when I landed, it was fun for a second, but then I asked myself, why did you do that? My wife was pregnant with Micah at the time. What if things didn't go well? What if something would have happened? Anything could have happened. And yet all the signs and all the solutions that were there, all the answers were right there the whole time. Saying, don't do this. And yet we will keep on doing things. We'll keep fishing from the left-hand side, won't we? I promise you this, I will never go skydiving again. It's in fact, if you would like to see they videotaped it for me. It's on YouTube. You can actually type in Wayne Meads skydiving and it'll show you the whole event. And the look on my face as I was sitting there in the plane doing it, they had one of those cameras that pointed to you. You could tell I was uncomfortable. And if you were to ask me right then and there, how are you doing? When the guy that was diving with me said, how are you doing? Guess what I said? This is awesome. Yeah, this is great. I'm good. No, I'm not. I'm scared to death. I don't feel like doing this, to be honest with you. I think I've made a mistake. Keep your money. I'm willing to bail out. But you don't do that, do we? When somebody asks you, how are you? Tell them. When you find a disciple and you're holding on to them, and if you don't feel right, tell them. I'm scared. Something's telling me not to do this, but I think I should do it because I think it's going to take care of my family. I think it's going to pay my bills. I think. You see, the disciple that you go and you approach, it's got nothing to lose in your situation. So the chances are he or she's going to tell you the truth. He or she's not going to lie to you. He or she's going to tell you what side of the boat to throw the net. It's all right to be scared. You're supposed to be scared. You're supposed to be fearful. And when you are, you got to stop and ask yourself, what would Christ have me to do? Because even for the fishermen, they didn't know until they found out that they were so worried about their problem, they didn't realize that Jesus was so close already. He was right there on the shore. We're not looking for Jesus in our troubles, are we? Then in the morning came the ringing voice. Cast the net on the right side of the ship. Try a new method now. Adopt new plans. Strike out on a new course. What a deal the disciples have lost if they had suddenly refused to make that venture, to try something new. Leads me to wonder how many things I've lost or given up or sacrificed because I refused to try something that was, here it goes again. I'm going to say it again. That was new. Trying something new. No amount of fish would have filled their net to breaking. No one in the boat would have cried, "It is the Lord." The figure would have vanished from the shore. The hot sun would have mounted, and a dreary day would have followed a weary night. It had been another repetitive cycle. And you know what they would have done again? They'd have gone back out again the next night and tried something their own way, a little different again, prolonging the problem that they were faced with, and inevitably saying, "Why can't I succeed? Why can't I win? Why can't I have the blessings that he or she has?" And we will even guide ourselves in our own life looking at the highlight reels of everything that Jesus has done in somebody else's life, the way Jesus has blessed somebody else, and you're going to stand there and tell yourself, "I want what he or she has. I'll try what they did." Jesus is like, their blessings aren't your blessings. Don't try what they try. Christ, and they led them to the blessing that they have. Your blessings, God has for you. Your path is your own. You will be an example for what he has prepared for you in your life. You've just got to try something new. Don't jump out of planes if you're being told not to. Don't be so bold as to think, when all the symbols and all the signs are there, that you could do this anyway. And I can make it work. I'm not sure about this job. I'm not sure about this investment. Oh, wow, we invest in others, don't we? So many people have lost by the ideas and the perception that if I just had a little more money, if I take what savings that I had and I just doubled it, all my problems are going to be away. They're going to be gone. And we invest in those things that keep us throwing the net on the left-hand side of the boat. Don't we? Number three. Christ can manage your lives a lot better than you can. He truly can. I can't wait to meet Jesus, because one of the things, if I'm allowed to do, is I'm going to ask him, "Lord, I know I made some mistakes. I know I deviated. But if you would, and think about this for a moment. If you would, Lord, now that this is over and I'm in your arms and I'm in heaven with you and the Heavenly Father, show me the blueprint from my life that you had planned for me. What was it that you had planned for me? What was it that you wanted me to do that I didn't do? What was it that I missed that you wanted me to have? What is it that I decided that I could keep beating my head and you let me do it, and I could have avoided all that pain? I could have avoided all the sorrow." And he would probably say something like this to all my children. It was simple. My blueprint for you is to follow me. And there's no need for Jesus to tell me the things that I could have had. There's no need for us to focus on those things where you think you should have been, because you don't ever want to forget the grace of where God has you right now, because he wants his plan to be in your life. And he is so sure of it that he has guided us through grace, guided us out of certain situations where I can tell you firsthand, I should be dead right now. I should be dead. Why did I get to live? Why did I overcome those obstacles? And I didn't really overcome them. I just ended up in a situation that left me saying, how did I get here? Just like the men in the boat. How did we get here? And why is it was so simple that we could have overcome this long ago? And don't get this sermon wrong, please. Please don't get it wrong. That it can be so simple that once again you think to yourself, okay, I saw what I should have done there. I will do that for everything else. Because the solutions for your problems today are not the solutions that you're going to need for your problems that are coming up tomorrow. Jesus is saying you're going to need me even more a year from now because there's something getting ready to happen in your life. Build your faith now on the problems that you're faced with. Be strengthened. Get strong. Listen to me. Realize when I told you to put it on the right side of the boat, what happened? You had more fish than you had planned on taking home. You only wanted half a boat. I gave you enough to break the nets. And all we had to do was just find him. Just look for him. And for us, he's right there. We forget to say, that's right, you got me out of that situation before. The odds are you can do it again. That's why I said last week, I know that there are going to be things in my life that are going to be difficult. I know for a fact there are going to be things in my life that are getting ready to get tougher. You know, and one of the things that I have prayed for, tried to learn through Micah and my wife and this ministry and everything that is placed on us is I've had to learn how to try to be calm. I'm a lot calmer than I used to be. You might not believe it or not, but I'm a lot calmer, a lot more patient, persistent in other areas, slower to speak. And there's a reason why, and I need to be, because I'm getting ready to have a little girl on top of what Micah's doing, and then on top of what my wife wants me to do, and what work wants me to do, and how I'm supposed to perform, and the problems and the complaints and everything else that go along with it, not including the everyday natural things that happen in life. The other day, I rolled my window down on the minivan, and I can always tell and judge how frustrated I am with things when little things bother me so bad. As I rolled the window down, you know there's a rubber trim that goes inside of your window that your window fits in so rain doesn't come in. As I put the window down, it started going down automatically. The trim started falling out. And I thought to myself, Lord, no, it's something else. But yet it's not really that big of a deal, is it? So I'm having to learn to be able to have faith in what God is wanting me to do now. I'm supposed to experience this frustration. I'm supposed to learn to rely on Him for that control. I'm supposed to understand that I don't do what a lot of people do, and I should never do what a lot of people do. They quit. They quit. You see, the one option Jesus gives each and every one of His children is free will. The option to make a choice that if you don't think that the life I have planned for you is worth living, your misery is completely refundable. I'll let you have it back. But if you want to try something different, I'm here for you. We were having Sunday school this morning. We were reading in Psalms 107. We were talking about the things that God has done and our commitment to testify and to remember, to think back that He was so good to me then. And through each and every turmoil that I have been through, I have the assurance today that He's going to be just as good to me tomorrow. Those things He has promised, they're coming true. And I didn't have to wait till I was 51 years old to believe that. That is the mindset that a child should have. That children should have been taught and to grasp hold of and to understand that the best is yet to come. He wants us to try something new. And first and foremost, the reason you're not seeing Jesus, it might be just like the disciples. You weren't looking for Him to begin with. And He was right there the whole time. As we begin to sing our closing song, we've got a lot to think about. I don't know where you're at right now. I don't know if you're like me and you think you have some brilliant idea for what you need to do for your life. In the back of your mind saying, I'm probably going to fail at this too. I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to relax, put something in the hands of Christ and let it go. I've come to find that if I worry and if I'm concerned more about you than I am of myself, I give Jesus the opportunity to work on those things in my life where I don't interfere. And I don't block what He has and what He's got planned for me. So today I worry about you. I have the assurance I'm going to be okay. I'm going to have a difficult day. I'm going to go out for something and I'm not going to catch it. And I'm going to have to stop and look for Jesus because I know He's close. And for all of us today, because of the cross, you know where He is? It's right here. You take Him with you everywhere you go. He's the rock. So I challenge you today. There's an opportunity to stop the head-banging, frustrating things that are going on in your life. There's an opportunity today to say, you know what, I want an easier way that's a little bit softer that I know is out there. I just haven't been looking for it. I know there's enough out there to fill my boat and more. It's just maybe you're holding on to something. The words will be up on the screen. The song is number 671 in your songbook. I ask you to follow along. And this altar is always open. It is always a place to come and try something else, try something different. As we sing verses 1, 2,